8 p.m. Present, Council President Deshawn, Councilmember Charbonneau, Councilmember Curtis, Councilmember Arthur Chase, Treasurer City Clerk James Johnson. Also here today, I have our Recreation Director, I have our Zoning Administrator, I have our Superintendent of Streets, I have our Police Chief who is online, I have representative from the Fire Department, Mr. Carbine, and I have Representative Page is in the audience. Did I miss any? First item, second item on the agenda is additions and deletions to the agenda. I am going to add an accounts payable item that you have in your packet that should be added to the consent agenda. And I would like also to add as number 11 before adjournment to set the next regularly scheduled council meeting for December 2nd, 2024. Council members good with that? So may we move then to the consent agenda. We will have the regular meeting minutes of November 4, 2024, the regular meeting minutes of November 8, 2024, accounts payable warrants for November 7, 2024, with the new addition of accounts payable warrant of November 13, 2024, payroll warrants of November 14, 2024, and liquor licenses and vendor permits and special events permits that were already addressed. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the accounts payable warrant that we discussed for November 13, 2024?
So
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Now take your time. Thank you. See, they do. I just want to make sure that's the addition. So. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of health officer. We will have a potential vote. May I please have a motion to appoint Michael Brown as the city's health officer effective immediately? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comment? And you're willing to do this, Mr. Brown, correct? Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next item on the agenda is NBRC authorized official and general resolution with a potential vote. I would like to recognize Mike Welsh, who is online. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me, Madam Mayor.
We can, thank you very much.
I'm glad to be here. As you know, we're required to provide a authorized representative to the Northern Border Regional Commission for signing off on grant requisitions and grant reporting. Previous city manager Jonathan Delabrie was that authorized representative for the city. Prior to that, Mayor Sullivan was authorized. I prepared a resolution, which you may or may not have seen and been distributed. In addition to the MBRC resolution, I prepared a general resolution because there were other grant agreements as well where we should have an authorized representative. And so I would recommend approving the resolution for MBRC and the general resolution so that Mayor Sullivan is authorized as the Chief Executive Officer of the city to sign reports, to sign requisition requests, so that we can keep the projects moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions if members of the City Council or the Mayor have them.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask for a motion first, and then we'll go into questions. May I please have a motion to approve and have the mayor or sign the authorized official and general resolution and other documents as needed for submission and required for completion and compliance of the grant?
So
The motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments?
On the resolution for the general grants, I'm hesitant because I think the council would like to know what grants are happening and what. I mean, I have no problem with you signing them. It's just, I guess I don't want to be left out of the loop.
So, Mr. Welch, do you want to respond to that?
I can comment only on the grants that I'm assisting the
Correct.
city with. And I provided a list of those grants to the mayor and to the prior city manager. There are many other grants that are still out there that I have nothing to do with, but they will all require a authorized representative from the city. So if you don't authorize the mayor and you don't have a city manager, I would still recommend that you have somebody that is authorized on behalf of the city to send in reports and send in requisitions. It's to the city's advantage to be able to draw down any funds that are available to them, and there is a requirement that you report regularly, and an authorized rep has to report.
Right, I understand that. I was just wondering, how is the rest of the council going to know what's happening with grants? Sometimes it's too easy just to sign it and forget it. Is there a way that the rest of us would know?
That's a very good question, Counselor, and I would think that, number one, anything I prepare is going to be submitted to the mayor for signature and review, and she could certainly circulate any of that to the council. And any other reports that are being submitted on behalf of the city council for requisition or reporting, the city council should be aware of that. So whoever is managing those programs, you should put them on notice that they need to provide you with that information in advance so you know what's going on. And that, you should go over the list of all the outstanding grants and who's doing what, and really understand those, because like I said, I'm not managing all of them. There are several grants that are outstanding there that you all need to know what's going on in them. And in addition to that, just to add, I am retiring in December at the end of the year, and I put the city manager and others there in Newport on notice that I'm not going to keep doing this reporting after the end of December, so you need to figure out how that's going to work. So the point you raised is very, very pertinent, and it's important that whoever's doing this keeps the city council informed.
So I'll address that. The charter is clear that the mayor can, at the mayor's discretion, bring to the council information. And I believe that information has been brought to the council as needed, particularly on these grants. So we have pulled the list of the grants, so we're going through each one, and the Treasurer's Department and I are going through all of them. And that will be something that, of course, would we're trying to make sure nothing gets lost. And we're doing reimbursements, and we've already need to be able to get the money back, and so that's very important. So I don't believe that there's going to be an issue with the council's awareness, especially since right now, we are so focused on compliance.
Right, and understood, because grants do take quite a bit of work. I was just wondering, are there any grants that, in your discretion, the council isn't going to be made aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, right now, we are looking at the list that we were provided previously. We are having meetings with the managers right now, and we are doing that to make sure that we don't miss any grants.
Yeah.
And I have spent several, I would say, past over a week, making sure that I found what needed to be sent over to Mr. Welsh. So right now, we are doing the cleanup. So there shouldn't be a grant that the council isn't aware of. So if I find it, we'll know that.
Excellent,
Okay.
thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. And just to add to that, Mr. Welsh and I and some of our department heads have a meeting this week, coming to go over the grant.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
See you on Wednesday.
I'll be there.
Have a great night, folks.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
I'm gonna put these together, even though only one document needs to be signed. I think the one that I just signed, the second one, was only one signature, but you can recheck it. Yes, isn't that this one? Do you have it? There should be two. I have the border. And I will be meeting with Mike on Wednesday, so I can. Oh, fantastic, thank you.
Just double check and make sure.
Yeah, this is the one, thank you for that. There's one more coming your way.
Just do you want these?
Mr. Treasurer, would you mind holding those?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the ambulance services agreement with a potential vote. Mr. Pronto? Mr. Johansson? Come on up. Thank you.
Where do you want us? You have something to put this down, because I don't memorize all this stuff, so.
Oh, I see.
So we asked for a meeting several weeks ago, sent stuff out to you. And our contract with you ends December 31st. The first payment will be January 1st. So we kind of like a contract signed, which we sent out also quite a while ago. And so I'm going to try to make this short because the meeting tonight is really about you guys. But what it boils down to is last year you paid Newport Ambulance Service $240,869. This year we're going to be asking for $257,114. That's a $16,000 increase. But I want to keep in mind that dispatch, which we pay to you, went up $1,200. But we paid the Newport PD $123,454 for dispatch. So your net, the way I look at it, is about $130,000. We didn't used to pay for dispatch at all. So as the dispatch goes up, so does everybody's rates, but then the money just turns around and goes back to you. So I just wanted to point that out. The $16,000 increase, as everybody knows, payroll, cost of ambulances, cost of supplies, cost of everything has gone up a lot. It would have been a lot more than that, but we've found creative ways to increase our revenue. So we're bringing this to you as what we think is a pretty solid budget. And what we'd like is for you guys to at least vote on a contract. I have 2 of them here. I've already signed. I think you may have a contract that I signed, probably dated a while ago, so that doesn't matter. And that's what we were hoping, that there'd be a vote on that. The only thing I want to update you on is we're strong, doing real well, adding paramedics most of the time. We're trying to add as many paramedics as we can, and everybody knows what's going on with the hospital, and I hope nothing goes on with the hospital. But if it does, it's going to be a lot more transfers, and we have, as a group, decided that if that happened, we're probably would try to put a full-time transfer team on, which would be another ambulance at $200,000 plus, and if it's going to be 24/7, that's what, 6 or 8 people to do that. So it's a big project. So hopefully we don't have to get to that point, but if it ever happens, we'll be prepared. We'll be prepared because that's what we're doing. So, the only thing that we've added, last year we added the UTGs, which I don't know if any of you know what that is, but if it's in Brighton,
Unified Towns and Gores.
Unified Towns and Gores, it's 6 towns. It's Averill, Lewis, Ferdinand, little small towns, but we added those to our package 2 years ago. We added Troy. So we now cover from basically Johnson on the west of us to Ferdinand, right?
Yeah.
So
888 square miles.
yeah, 888
With 4
stations.
stations.
So it's huge. So that's what we're hoping. And if you guys have any questions for us, we'd be glad to answer.
When did you say our contract expires?
December 31st. Yep. And the only other thing, I will add one other thing. So our payment, I mean, you guys know what it's like not to get money in on time. So our payment is supposed to be every month on the 1st of the month, and that doesn't seem to ever happen. And part of the reason, I think, is if you don't put in a request for it until the first meeting of the month, which could be the 7th, and then it gets voted on, and then it gets sent out, and sometimes we've been as much as 30 days behind. We've had to call up a few times, and that hurts our cash flow too. So if there was some way that you could just say, the last meeting of the month before to approve the next payment. I mean, it's a contract, so I don't know how that works, but we'd really like to get as close to the first as we could if it's possible. So, thank you. Questions?
So may I have a motion to approve the ambulance services agreement as presented and have the mayor sign the agreement?
So,
The motion, do I have a second?
second?
The motion and a second, any comment? I will tell you, Mr. Pronto, that we are working with the treasurer's office and myself are going in there and we are making sure that different controls are being put in place. So contracts are tickled and so on. So we have been focusing on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I say something?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question.
Uh,
Pam Ladd, City of Newport. Charlie, when did you send the original application in and where did it go?
Went to the city manager, I'm not sure the date that we sent it, but it was.
So
after we-
I can address that. That was
Okay.
back in October.
Yeah,
And
it's,
so-
it's,
And then I located it and there was some emails that I located that were old and found them and then I spoke with Mr. Pronto and we got it where it needs to be.
I finally sent Linda a thing, so geez, we've been asking to get on the agenda. I'm gonna be leaving and December is coming up pretty quick, so we'd like to know where we stand, because for some reason you voted us down, and we're in a mad scramble to the first of the year for all the other towns, because we have 22 towns that we deal with.
Yeah. And I thank you for your patience while we, move everything
Well,
smoothly.
we knew it was going on, I just thought I'd bring it up.
Madam Mayor, can I say something?
Sure.
Charlie, if you get, I know it's a contract, we need paper trail, if you can get an invoice to us a few days before the second meeting of the month, we can approve it at that second meeting and then
The month before.
we'll.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yep.
Yep,
And
okay,
if you'll send that
perfect.
to me and to the treasurer's office so that I'm at least copied on it, so we have,
Where does it go right now, Mr. Johnson? Does it come to you or?
No, they
No.
go upstairs.
it's
Been
been
going
going
upstairs.
to Civ. So
Okay.
if you would please address it to me and address it to Mr. Johnson, between the two of us, we will do the check and balance and make sure it's not missed.
Okay, perfect, because yeah, they're going out tomorrow, so.
Okay?
All right,
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Johnson. Do you have a copy of the contract? You wrote on yours? Do you have
Which the-
yours? Of the ambulance? No, I signed one, I just didn't know if there was an additional
Here's mine.
one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the presentation and discussion regarding VHB's improved master plan sharing with a potential vote. I am going to just lay out a little bit of some ground rules here. I'm going to recognize the presenters this time so that they can do the presentation. At that point, after they are done, I will call for a vote, depending upon what the vote is after we hear the presentation. At that point in time, I will open it up for comments. And then you just need to be sure that when I recognize you, you come up and you speak through the mayor. So it's not, this is not a community forum. You have to actually speak this way and I will hear your comments. And this way the council can hear everything and we will pay attention so we understand what's going on because there's a lot of people here. Okay, so at this point in time, Mr. LaForce, would you like to introduce who your presenters are? And it's
Yeah.
all yours, and thank you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave LaForce, and I'm a current board member of Newport Downtown Development, and I also chair the Economic Task Force. From this point forward, I'll refer to Newport Downtown Development as NDD, so it's not so much of a mouthful. I wanted to go through quickly the timeline of how we got here this evening. So in February 2024, the City Council entered into an agreement with NDD to create an enhanced master plan for the City of Newport. The goal of the plan was to shape the overall vision of the community's economic development by incorporating the good work done within the previous studies and enhancing that data with granular and specific opportunities for development, as well as discovering and reviewing funding opportunities. In April of 2024, NDD sent out an RFP to 16 companies whose primary expertise was in municipal planning and economic development. At the conclusion of vetting those responses, NDD made a recommendation to the mayor and the council to contract with VHB to develop an enhanced master plan. This recommendation was approved, and VHB was contracted on June 14th, 2024. In developing the plan, VHB worked closely with NDD, the city department heads, local business owners, as well as holding public sessions to solicit input from residents of Newport. Tonight, we have several members from VHB teams joining us. David Saladino is online, and Christina Gramando is also online, and also Michael Willard is here in the room with us. They are here to review the plan with the council and solicit your thoughts and answer any questions you may have. Before I hand off to David to start the presentation, I did want to publicly say thank you to the mayor and the council for trusting NDD in managing this process. We appreciate your trust and partnership, and we are hopeful you are happy with the result of the work that has been done in the last 4.5 months. I also wanted you to be aware that our Economic Development Coordinator, Brian Gray, could not be here tonight, but he had a large part in this work. Brian stepped up as a volunteer in January for NDD and has committed 15 to 20 hours a week in assisting us to get to this point tonight. Although he lives in Essex currently, he has a passion for Newport as he was born and raised here. I also want to thank the many members of our Economic Task Force, the Housing Committee, and our Communications Committee. These three groups have put a tremendous amount of work in this plan, and I'm very grateful for their passion and commitment to the City of Newport. I'll hand off to VHB for their presentation, and after their presentation and your vote, I will go through the next steps of how we will proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Am I coming through? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, David, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Let's see, are my slides showing up as well?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, great. Well, thank you again. Again, I'm David Saladino, a planner with VHB out of South Burlington, Vermont. We also have, as noted, Mike Willard from our Vermont office, and then Christine is from our South Portland, Maine office. So looking forward to getting into this. Wanted to kind of condense quite a bit of information, and as Dave alluded to, a pretty intensive last 5 months or so of discussions, meetings, and digging into this enhanced master plan. And so trying to pull this together in a fairly high-level fashion, and happy to answer questions as we get into it. So what we're going to go through is a high-level overview of the master plan itself. That includes a section on housing assessments. We'll touch on that piece. Then Mike Willard will talk through some of the priority development sites that we looked at. We'll touch base on the infrastructure assessment, talk about some funding strategies and tax increment financing, and then we'll wrap up and address any questions that may come up. Just to kind of step back here, the overarching purpose of this update to the master plan is really a focus on action. And so, as noted here, the plan is really to guide the city's development strategy over the next 10 years, and really serving to develop an economically thriving city with this as a center of commerce and residential living in the downtown, and leveraging the waterfront for outdoor recreational and tourism. I will note, many master plans tend to be fairly broad and not all that deep in any one particular area. This particular master plan update is really focused on going deep on kind of action and development that can spur the kind of things that have been talked about in various planning efforts over the years. And so rather than going broad and kind of encompassing all of the aspects of a typical master plan, we're really focusing on kind of actions and actionable steps that can really help to move the ball forward. And we'll get into some of those things here as we go forward. Just a kind of high level, this is essentially the table of contents of the master plan. So we get into introduction, as I noted, a housing overview, the priority housing, priority site assessment, supporting infrastructure that supports that redevelopment and infill development, funding strategies, and then a pretty comprehensive appendix to the document. So just to kind of frame the context here of where we'll be talking about, this is kind of a zoom in of the city of Newport. The area that's outlined in kind of the orange or gold is the designated downtown boundary, and that's really where we focus our primary efforts here, as looking at kind of future opportunities and development opportunities within that boundary. You'll also see 4 other areas kind of outside of that. The downtown district are also kind of secondary growth areas that came up through discussions with kind of the internal group as well as other stakeholders within Newport. So kind of getting started here with the overall housing assessment, we started with data. Wanted to look at data both kind of all the way from kind of statewide, national, regional, and then all the way down to kind of local information. You can see here that the various housing needs and housing assessments that we looked at, as well as the Vermont Housing Finance Authority's housing data website, which is a great source for information, and as well the Census Bureau, which has quite a bit of demographic information. So just to kind of start off with some high-level kind of demographics here, starting with population, some interesting statistics here, looking at kind of 3 levels of geography: Newport City, Orleans County, and the state of Vermont. You can see here, this shows the population change since 1970. You can see while both the state of Vermont and Orleans County saw double-digit increases in population, Newport City has been relatively flat, overall about a 4% decrease, landing at just over 4,000 population here in 2023. A similar trend was seen in the number of households. So over that same time period, the state of Vermont and Orleans County grew by 13% and 12% respectively. Newport City lost about 5% of households, so that mirrors the population change of that time frame. And then looking at median household income, this is as of the last census in 2020, we see Newport City coming in slightly below the county median at 58,000 and the state of Vermont's median at 67,000. So slightly below both the county and state incomes. Then we look at the supply, the housing supply. So across Newport City, we see just under 24,000, 2383 total housing units in the city. A very small percentage have been added in the last 24 years, so only 2% increase since 2000. That's about 41 new units added. And then as of 2020, about 7% of those housing units were vacant. Roughly 3.3 of those were rental units. We look at the breakdown a little bit further of those housing units, and we see about 95% of those are market rate housing units. And then 131 of those units are identified as affordable housing units, so about 5% of the total housing supply. Those 131 affordable units are located across 9 different locations. Those are all shown on the table to the right. 2 of those locations are senior housing only. And so then those are all kind of permanently affordable housing units. Another way to look at this also is in terms of kind of the burden that housing has on individual residents. So we look at this terminology of cost burdens of ownership. And so cost burdens, as you can see at the bottom note here, are households that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing expenses. So we see just under a third, 32% of Newport City households were cost burdened. which is fairly close, a little bit higher, but relatively close to both the state and county averages at 31 and 29%. Then looking a little bit further breakdown here in terms of households owned versus rented, we see 60% of the households in Newport City owned and 40% of those rented. Slightly lower home ownership rate than the state as a whole, but higher than many kind of comparable cities and towns that are surrounding. So a slightly higher home ownership rate than kind of other areas that have denser downtowns. This probably won't come as a surprise to many folks, but housing prices have gone up quite a bit. This is showing, so on the left-hand side, the last 3 years, housing prices have grown 60% in Newport City. Relatively small data points, but there is still a fairly market increase of 60% over that time frame, which is almost more than double the Orleans County average in that time frame. So the right-hand side looks a little bit further out, so from 2010 through 2023, you can see those median sale prices. So while the state of Vermont grew at about 70% between 2010 and 2023, from 194 to 325. Newport City grew at a faster rate, so 107,000 up to 227,000. That was about a 110% increase in that time frame. So you can see prices are increasing. As we saw in the last slide, it's not necessarily due to increase, or maybe due to the the relatively small increase in supply. So we've got demand that is steady or maybe increasing, and the supply is not keeping up with demand. That leads to often increasing sale prices here. Another way to look at the housing supply, this jobs to housing index, so comparing the number of jobs to number of homes in a certain jurisdiction. You can see here in this chart, Newport City is at 2.0. So that means that within the city boundaries, there's 2 jobs for every housing unit. A good rule of thumb here is that about a 1.5 ratio is a nice balanced ratio. Below that, you start to get into kind of bedroom community territory. At the very top of this list, Newport Town, which has many homes but not a lot of jobs. The other end, St. Albans City in this example, has about 2.5 jobs for every housing unit. So Newport City is in a good location here for accommodating additional, supporting additional jobs within the jurisdiction. So then looking at needs in terms of what kinds of housing needs would be needed going forward. We started with the statewide housing needs assessment, which was completed just this past June, so it's very current and very fresh information. This is calling for statewide an increase in between 7 and 11% increase in housing units, really to meet the existing demand. Drilling down into Orleans County, it projects a need of about 1,100 housing units across the county, or roughly a 6.5% increase in housing units, with, as noted, 70% of those dedicated to rental units. So then bringing that down into the Newport context, the master plan that we're putting forward here, we incorporate that increase, that target of 6.5% increase in residential units to meet that demand. That corresponds to an increase in approximately 155 housing units over 5 years, or over the 10-year period of this plan, about 310 housing units in that time frame. As you'll hear about in a minute or two, as we've looked at some priority sites downtown, based on the initial assessment that we conducted, we estimated approximately 410 housing units that could be accommodated within those development sites. So that would exceed that 310 housing unit estimate over the next 10 years to meet that current demand. So in terms of recommended actions from a housing context here, the first one's probably a no-brainer, but really looking to increase that total housing supply. Talk about targeting 310 units in the next 10 years. This is certainly not a cap. If there's opportunities to build more than those 310 units, that is certainly possible for Newport. Really focusing on market rate housing production and the types and uses of housing that would accommodate those market rate users. And then targeting no needs. Senior housing, we've seen that the increase in senior and 55+ community, Newport has grown faster than both the state and the county. So really making sure to accommodate senior housing, as well as smaller units, accessory dwelling units, and so forth, to accommodate those who don't need much space, but are just looking for a space to call home. Within that, then also diversifying the housing groups, different sizes, price points, and ownership and rental. Obviously, lots of strengths to build on here: the location, the proximity to employment. This we'll talk about in a little bit. Plenty of infrastructure capacity, looking at things like water, wastewater, parking, transportation infrastructure. And we've made some recommendations within the plan for some regulatory and programmatic updates. So looking at accessory dwelling units, so a secondary unit on a certain parcel, senior housing, shared parking to minimize the burden on redevelopment plans to provide parking within the downtown, and then looking at potential areas to increase density to accommodate that growth in downtown. So going from that kind of focus on housing, we'll move on now and pass it on to Mike to talk about some site development concepts we looked at.
Good evening. So as Dave mentioned, so we took this study and we looked at a variety of what we consider priority sites within the downtown. And so what you're seeing on this graphic is sort of a 3D model of sort of the reimagined downtown. And so the various sites are highlighted in color. So the left side of the screen there, that's sort of like Main Street in the downtown core. That graphic on the right-hand side, that's over by Waterfront Plaza and where the east side is today. And
Can I have you stand over there maybe, so?
Sure.
Take the mic, please.
Take the microphone.
wow, too many people. Sorry. Sorry,
Thank
folks.
you.
Okay, so I think we're ready to jump to the next, Dave. So the first site that we're looking at, I think you hit it again, Dave. So this is what's considered Block 5 and Block 8 in your city zoning. So where this is coming down, just to highlight, we've got Main Street. This is the main central spine. Here we are tonight at the Gateway Center. So this is that vacant block that's there today. And so what we did is we took both blocks and combined them to make more of a meaningful impact of what could happen there for a development site, recognizing it is sort of a gateway building into the downtown, a lot of traffic coming in off 3rd Street from that part of the city. So we'll advance to the next piece here. So these are the 2 lots that we looked at. So you can see they're sort of highlighted, this one here and this parcel here. So we basically saw them really as one and sort of reimagined what that opportunity would be to take a look at that site in particular. So a few things that we're looking at is recognizing that, so here's Main Street coming in, you've got 3rd Street there, and so this bottom graphic is sort of like a 3D view of what this building could look like. And again, part of it is we're looking at what your city zoning is for building heights, sort of limitations, parking, that sort of thing. And so recognizing you have Main Street, so we're looking at a ground floor, these color blocks down here. So red is what we consider active use. So that could be a commercial development of some sort, any number of sort of retail or commercial applications. Again, you think about downtown streetscape activation, something that's on the main street that people are sort of engaging with. So that's what that red means. So that would be sort of along this Main Street edge for that streetscape activation. And then we're showing housing above, residential housing above that piece. And then we've got sort of a ground floor parking scenario in that sort of purple space, and then sort of parking to the back. And again, recognizing sort of current zoning patterns and developments. This will play out over several of these slides, but just to highlight it, that we're trying to put parking in the back so that the buildings really frame the street edge and create that activation that most communities are looking for in sort of a modern urban downtown setting. Okay, so the next site we're looking at here, so this is what's called Block 4. And so these are the 2 county and superior courthouses in this sort of brown color. And so we really looked at that as sort of one site. So combining them together, so you can see here in back of the county courthouse, there's sort of a large sort of surface parking lot, sort of a vacant space that's back there today. And so we played out two different scenarios here. One is taking a look at that vacant lot and saying, okay, what if we consider housing in that back lot? How could that work? So you sort of have ground floor parking, you have residential above, and then you sort of maintain the existing uses as they are today with that sort of civic use of the two courthouses. The other option was recognizing that one of the courthouses maybe want to sort of rebranded, repurposed, reimagined, and so where would that courthouse use go? So one of the other options was taking a look at this sort of purple massing here, and then so working with Building and General Services, they provided some programming requirements, what they may need in the future for a courthouse, and so this sort of meets the idea of about 40,000 square feet of a courthouse building with under the subsurface parking underneath. So again, it's just taking a look at both scenarios. If you introduced housing here versus maybe a reuse of a courthouse, and then maybe one of these courthouses gets reimagined as either housing or commercial on its own. Or it could be converted to City Hall. Any other civic use also could play out here. So the next site, so this sort of brown building, so this is City Hall today, police department is here. So you've got the back surface parking lot that's there. So that's the next site we took a look at. Again, we sort of combined these two together. So it was 22 Main, which is the municipal building, and then you had sort of the parking lot that's here now. That there's the retaining wall, so it sort of drops down from the street up here. And so it created an opportunity to do sort of like a parking deck scenario. So reimagining this site, we looked at introducing sort of a housing block in back of sort of retaining City Hall building as it is today, and sort of looking about what could be done there, so accommodating sort of a residential structure, again with ground floor parking, and then doing sort of a lid over the existing parking that's there today, so you sort of maximize parking within the downtown core and gain a few more spaces within the downtown, sort of that walkable environment. All right, so the next site, so that's the site just beside City Hall, again, sort of underutilized space, so we sort of reimagined what could happen there. Again, so orientation, Main Street, here's City Hall. So it's just this smaller parcel here, which is considered Block 6 or 246 Main. So similar idea. So we introduced a ground floor activation space, sort of retaining commercial use along the streetscape edge, and then putting housing underneath or up above, and then maintaining parking at sort of at grade. The next site, so this was the fun one. So this one, everyone is very familiar with on Main Street. So this is the vacant block that's there today. It's such a large site and it's an incredible opportunity within the downtown. So it's really fun to reimagine what this might look like based on current zoning, building heights and setbacks. So that's the parcel there that we sort of looked at. So it's all these combined parcels in reality. So that's that sort of vacant block. So this was proposing a 7-story building within that block. Primary use would be sort of residential on the upper floors, but again, maintaining that streetscape activation as that sort of what we consider active use, what could happen there, sort of streetscape engagement along that edge, sort of commercial or retail or other. And then we sort of worked through, the grade change is interesting here because if you're up at this level, you drop down several feet in elevation, so it's an inclined plane coming across this site. So it creates these really interesting opportunities to create a parking deck in the back of the building and sort of circulation underneath on this side. So you get a 2-story parking deck situation here, so you really can create a meaningful impact for parking inventory to accommodate the residential use that could be there. In this scenario, just for purposes, we're showing 265 parking spaces on this lot with this 7-story building. So can handle quite a bit. Next site, so block 7 and 26. So again, we sort of saw them as one because they're right here along Main Street, and then they sort of parallel along Seymour. So we just saw that as an opportunity to really do something more of a meaningful impact along that street edge. So we showed it as sort of one redevelopment pattern. So again, you've got Main Street here. So the front of the building, this sort of streetscape activation, this could be some sort of a community recreation center, like commercial use, residential above, and then sort of similar situation we were talking before, Seymour Street sort of is climbing in elevation, and so we have this opportunity for an at-grade parking scenario underneath the building that would sort of be dying in under grade, but again, with residential use up above. Next one, okay, so this is on Coventry Street, so Pick and Shovel is across the street. And so the idea was reimagining that whole block and what could be accommodated there for future use and consideration to sort of support the downtown, thinking about a walkable environment, senior housing, what are needs that would be within the downtown. So this site, again, shown in this blue line, so this is sort of what we were looking at. You're paralleling the railroad tracks here, and then you've got Pool and Grain to this side. So there's sort of some site limitations. You've got the truck route that's coming in now off Coventry Street. So this site, we sort of reimagined what it would look like if we rerouted the truck route so it stayed around the perimeter. If this became sort of an extension of your Main Street, and this became that sort of walkable pedestrian streetscape environment. And so what that could look like is that what we're showing is sort of a reimagined sort of streetscape extension of Main Street, street trees, on-street parking. This scenario shows what we're predicting as could be a grocery store of some sort. So in the next slides, we'll show the site where Village Market is today sort of reimagined. And so we're saying, okay, a downtown grocery store could successfully be fit on this site. You've got surface parking to accommodate the needs there. And then the other bold move was there's your new truck route sort of paralleling the railroad tracks, staying out of your downtown core, and might alleviate some traffic considerations that are happening here at this intersection today, and just keeps that truck route sort of moving along. Okay, so next site. So this is over off where Waterfront Plaza is today. And so the idea here is thinking of highest and best use. And so we saw this as a great opportunity to introduce residential, recognizing that the lake is an incredible amenity. Just thinking about the marina connections that are there, that sort of waterfront engagement and land value, and residential there would sort of benefit because of its incredible adjacency to the lake and access. So this plan, basically there was the site there, the Waterfront Plaza, Village Market, and so that was the goal is to sort of show how the residential blocking could fit in there. So again, creating this sort of really interesting interior circulation road, sort of a streetscape aesthetic, and having residential units with their own sort of amenity spaces, could be an outdoor pool, plaza area, but then also maintaining some sort of a potential public access to a marina that's out there. It could be private, but we showed it as sort of public, and we were really showing sort of like an activation space within this sort of core here to draw people in, so the public would feel welcome. And that's sort of depicted here where we had some retail potential there to support a marina. It could be restaurants, shops, any number of services that marinas need to operate. So the next site is where the east side is today, which is essentially right here. So the east side has a vision for their property, and so we're bringing that forward into this master plan. So it's really a comprehensive look at everything all considered. So this is the east side parcel. There's the east side building today. And again, so the idea was the plan is sort of a hotel along the waterfront, which would be a great use. The idea of this sort of expanded marina that would serve these sort of private residences here. There's some carports and garages, and then surface parking to sort of serve the needs of the hotel and the residential uses. So again, this is just a recap showing sort of where these priority sites were within the downtown core. So that's not to say all of the uses we shared with you, as David had mentioned, this is depicting about 410 housing units. There could be variability as each site is sort of realized and reimagined, but this was showing what the potential is for all these sites combined, that you could get approximately 410 housing units all in.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Last two sections here, wanted to just touch on infrastructure and funding opportunities, and then we'll pass it back for questions. In terms of infrastructure, we did do a pretty deep dive on transportation kind of overall and transportation needs to accommodate potential redevelopment opportunities as Mike was just referring to. So a couple things here, just going to go through, we won't dig in too much detail here, but just to give you a flavor for some of these ideas here. Number one here is looking at potential east-west connections, new connections to kind of extend the grid network downtown. This is south of Main Street, number one here. Number two here, hopefully everyone can see, that's just north. So running from Field Ave over to School Street, and extending that downtown grid. A couple of different improvements around the Main Street, School Street, 3rd Street intersection, both looking at access and driveway controls, and then the overall intersection control. Several studies have looked at different configurations there. Number 5 here, so at the Coventry Street, Main Street, and State Office Complex driveway, looking at potential to realign or better align the north-south movements of the Coventry Street approach with the State Office Complex driveway. As Mike was referring to here, going down Coventry Street, looking for ways to extend the walkable Main Street character, the streetscape, landscaping along the street frontage. Also, as Mike referred to, this opportunity to divert the truck traffic off of Coventry Street onto a new truck route that ties in a little bit closer to Railroad Square. A number of studies have looked at the Railroad Square confluence of roadways and looking at ways to better accommodate or better move all modes of transportation through this intersection. Number 9 here, this is one that's flagged that has been completed, one that was identified in a previous study, but looking at the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, so those are the push buttons as you cross, so that one has been installed. And then a fairly minor information from a previous study, this was to align the Gardner Park Road driveway with the access to the waterfront plaza. Also wanted to note a little further afield from the downtown, but also wanted to recognize the fact that we've got a great regional airport very close by, less than 10 miles away. Obviously important, it provides accommodations, both charter flights and business deliveries, number of services that are offered there, and as business and other uses potentially see increase in the future, recommend looking at ways to increase that connectivity, looking at transit connections and other ways to get back and forth between the airport and Newport City. And then finally here, looking at water and wastewater infrastructure. These first numbers here come directly from the city's operations. So from a water standpoint, city water standpoint, overall capacity is approved for up to 1.7 million gallons per day. That's the mg per d. So capacity is 1.7, currently using about 6 million gallons per day. So that leaves about 1.1 million gallons per day of excess capacity that's not being used currently. Similar story on the wastewater side, so capacity to treat about 1.3 million gallons per day. Currently using between the city and Derby about 0.6 million gallons per day. That leaves about 0.7 million gallons per day of wastewater treatment capacity at the existing plant. So then when we add on or made some estimates based on the various uses that Mike was showing in those site development concepts, you can see from a water demand about 0.15 million gallons per day estimated use. So comparing that to the 1.1 million gallons per day of available capacity, it's well within the capacity of existing water supply. And then similarly with wastewater treatment, estimating about 0.13 million gallons per day of additional wastewater. That's well within the 0.7 million gallons per day of remaining capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. So this is fairly unique. Many communities in a similar situation are running much closer to their capacity. So this is a real strength for the city. There's plenty of capacity from a water and wastewater standpoint to accommodate additional growth. One of the recommendations that we do make though is, and we didn't have a chance to look into this, but just to make sure that the physical plant, the infrastructure itself, can accommodate these additional growth. So looking at, pressure, fire flow, and fire suppression needs within the system. But from an overall system capacity standpoint, plenty of capacity from a water and wastewater standpoint. I failed to previous slides too. From a transportation capacity standpoint, we don't see any major capacity constrictions, both from a transportation standpoint, no major bottlenecks. Obviously some recurring congestion, but nothing that would limit development downtown. And similarly, from a parking standpoint, we do see ample parking within the downtown. So many other jurisdictions have significant limitations here. So whether they don't have enough parking or are congested and not enough capacity on the roadways, Newport offers plenty of capacity there to accommodate that future growth. Okay, and then to wrap up here on funding and financing, how do we move some of these redevelopment plans forward? A whole suite of kind of funding and financing options, whether they're grants or loans. Won't go through all of these, but you can see kind of the major buckets here, kind of tax credits. So that's providing credits to the developers, offsetting their tax burdens or tax liabilities. To encourage that either redevelopment or development in the downtown. And then a set of planning grants, looking at ways to kind of plan for the upcoming development and redevelopment. And then getting to actual implementation, whether those are loans or grants, you can see a suite of those. And then the last one on here, tax increment financing, I did want to just touch on a little bit deeper here, something that we looked at a high level. And has been looked at in the past in Newport. Actually, there was a district in place for a little while within the city. So could spend a whole hour talking about TIF overall. Won't do that here for sure, but just to kind of explain the model itself. So TIF is really it's a financing tool for public infrastructure that can then lead or catalyze the redevelopment. So the monies that get made available through the TIF doesn't necessarily, or does not fund directly the redevelopment itself, but it funds those improvements that can help to spur redevelopment within the downtown. See here, this TIF district is kind of that area that's expected to experience the most benefit from those improvements to the physical infrastructure that are made. And so you can see here going forward in a very abbreviated process, much more detail in the actual process. But the abbreviated process here, first is identifying specific development projects, partners that on the private side that are interested in moving forward. And then the infrastructure that's needed to catalyze that project. As Mike was pointing out, there's several potential locations. Those were kind of hypothetical development scenarios. Maybe one of those may be ready to move forward. So that would be the first step, is really identifying, kind of getting a site or sites identified with development partners that are interested in moving forward. Then from there, developing that TIF plan, getting approval both at the local and state level, assuming we're going for a statewide TIF district. From that point, once the TIF plan has been approved, the next step is to secure that debt financing to finance whatever that infrastructure is. So oftentimes it's, new water, new sewer lines, it may be a parking garage, it may be some widening of a roadway, maybe some other kind of infrastructure improvement that really encourages that redevelopment to happen. So that's step number 4. The development of the district continues over typically a 20 or more year time frame, and then valuation determination to wrap up. I will just note at a high level, the graphic on the right shows, so if you imagine the Main Street parcel, let's say, that currently has no building on it, so it's really no real taxable income. The blue area on the graphic to the right would essentially be 0. Let's say that there's some investment that gets in place that then spurs that development. We start the clock at the date that the plan is approved. As that development happens on that parcel, the parcel goes from very small value to, as if it goes forward with a 7-story building, a much higher valuation for that parcel that then generates taxes that go into the city coffers. That builds that tax increment. So that tax increment builds over time as that development moves forward. Ideally, that then spurs other redevelopments in adjacent blocks as good things start to build. That tax increment increases over time. That increment then gets used to pay off the bonds for whatever public infrastructure was used to incentivize or catalyze that growth. And once that bond is paid off, you essentially dissolve the district, and you end up in where the green area starts here with a new tax base. So the new general fund income for the town is now a larger tax base. So you've essentially kind of catalyzed that growth over time. Use that increment in the red kind of wedge area to pay off the bonds for that infrastructure, and then you end up with a larger tax base. So lots of different moving parts here, and it can be a little bit complex to understand, but it's really a way to finance infrastructure to spur that redevelopment in a downtown. So I think with that, we'll wrap up here. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'll pass it back to the mayor to take on questions or move however she'd like from here.
Well, thank you, everybody, for all the work you did and for this presentation. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask for a motion, and then when I open it up for comments, please, once you're recognized, identify who you are, come up to the microphone. Please remember to speak through me, okay, so it doesn't become a conversation between different parties, so we can hear what your thoughts are. And again, I really thank you for all the work you did on this. So may I please have a motion to approve distribution of the master plan to the public for continued discussion purposes with the community and stakeholders?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Comment? Ms. Grimm?
Laurie Grimm, City of Newport. A few. Number one, what happens with the private properties? I recognize this is the first real look at this, but have the owners, private property owners, specifically things like the parking lot across the street from United Christian Academy that they own, will they be considered brought into these discussions? Why is there a parking lot considered right out here behind the municipal building on a piece of property that looks right over the lake? Does the 7-story building on Main Street fit into the larger master zoning plan that was done years ago? And where's the post office going?
Thank you. So I just want to say, remember that these are options. And I'm going to, I believe Mr. LaForce might be the person who wants to address some of these issues, but remember, this is just the beginning of the discussion. And private property owners are aware that this is just a discussion. Nobody's coming in and seizing their property and turning it into a parking lot with music. So this is the beginning of the discussion, and these are opportunities that might fit within each block is my understanding. And once one is decided, that could change. But if you would like to take it a little bit further, or?
Yeah, basically, this is the initial foundation for starting conversations with both property owners that are currently existing and future developers going forward. So this is just the catalyst for those conversations to begin.
Right. And that also goes to conversations that we may end up having with the state and, you know,
Right.
legislature
Right,
and things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
So these are just opportunities that would best fit these blind blocks. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Emily Smart. I'm not a resident of Newport. I actually live in North Torrey, but I am on the board of directors for NDD, and I chair the communications committee. And I just wanted to point out to the council and everyone present that we are going to be handing out flyers where we have a survey available for people to provide comment on every single proposed spot. So we are actually really invested in what the community has to say, and we want to hear all the feedback.
Thank you.
So I'm really glad I showed up for this.
When does take back the contract?
We're gonna have to increase it now. I sat with Rick and showed him a plan that was designed in 1987, had actually some of the same stuff in it. And then there's been plan after plan after plan. But I want to tell you, this is probably the best plan that I've seen, most concise. I love everything about it except for number 7, don't ever put a parking garage overlooking the lake.
Right.
Paid Paradise put up a parking lot, it's not a good thing. But other than that, I think it's amazing, and it's about time. And no more studies, let's move forward.
Thank you. So, yes.
Hi, I'm Wendy McGilvery. I'm on the school board at the high school. I'm really excited about what I saw. It's excellent. When presenting it on future meetings, I'd like to see a little bit more about the income ranges on the housing that they're putting in. It's amazing to have stuff on the lake, but if it's going to be, you know, $250,000 to try to attract teachers, and then they're going to say, why don't you pay us more because your housing costs so much, right? So if there can be a little bit more information on the distribution of the elderly housing versus the income eligible housing versus the median housing. I'm one of the people in the town who couldn't afford the house that I live in now if I had to buy it now, right? So fortunately I bought it a long time ago. I'll make some money when I sell it, which is great, but I wouldn't be able to buy it because I'm priced out of Newport City, which is unfortunate. So I hope in the presentations that come up from your group, which are amazing, that it just shows a little bit more about maybe, the income ranges for the houses and the thought process behind it, because we are trying to attract young people who want to start families, who want to meet people, who want a sense of community, and these sort of buildings are going to be great for that, but not if it's going to just be so expensive that it's just a second home for people from Montreal.
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that is exactly what should be coming from this, is the future discussions will get into a correlation once we figure out what would go where and how, you know, to attract younger families, or how you address the different homes and the incomes, that there would be a correlation. And that's why right now it just identifies here's approximately the amount of units somewhere in the city that could be accommodated. Okay, thank you for that, very important point. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Ann Chirello, and I'm a resident of the city. And I think it's interesting that your study shows that we've got a lot of the infrastructure already there, if not most. And so what worries me is that you're going to ask taxpayers to help borrow the money when the infrastructure, the part that we can pay for with a TIF is already there. And then I wonder, why haven't people come in droves? Why aren't the businesses already here? We've got the infrastructure, and what we really need is to have people come in who want to build and develop businesses. We've already got the infrastructure. We shouldn't have to pay for it with a TIF. They should be here already. So I think a lot of the focus should be on getting those people to build and to bring the businesses here, as opposed to having the citizens pay out a loan to get the infrastructure that we seem to have a lot of already.
Thank you. And I believe that when you're talking about the TIF, and please jump in, is that you're looking for what could be a designated TIF district to start discussions and then look at it, not to say that it's a requirement that there is a TIF that goes forward, but to look at these various options and to see what might be beneficial if there was a TIF versus should there not be a TIF. So I think the further discussions are going to go more in depth on the pros and cons of TIF and where it would fit. And so, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Anyone else? I see there. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Ellen Stanley. I am a Newport City resident and I am a commercial lender at Passumpsic Bank. I also have been serving NDD on the Economic Development Task Force for the last year, I guess. We've done a lot of work to educate ourselves on tax increment financing, our other funding sources, and working to engage the important work that was all rolled out today. I'm really excited about this plan, the specifics that are spelled out within it, and the energy that it brings to the downtown, and the people that are engaged to move it forward. And I encourage others to get involved in shaping the future of our community. I've been fortunate to live here for 42 years and raise my family here. It was a great place to raise my family. Unfortunately, they've moved away for all the reasons that we all talked about here tonight. So carrying out the work set out in this plan, and it will be work, it's my hope that we'll be able to have some of those young families return to Newport and create that vibrant community that we all recall of a few decades ago. Collectively, we're all part of this plan's ultimate success, and so everyone's input and feedback over the next week, once it's made public, is really important. We've created a lot of positive partnerships toward our goal of creating the change that we all want and need in the community. So we're hoping that we'll see that support going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Also, thank you for participating in this. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Scott Grimes. I and my wife moved to Newport about 2 years ago. I'm serving as the treasurer of NDD. So I'm one of the sort of young, hip people that's moving up here. Sort of young, sort of hip, debatable. I just have to say I really love what's been presented here. There's a lot of effort that has gone into it. And I understand that there have been plans done in the past. And I really want to thank the council for allowing NDD to be a part of this, and I look forward to continued cooperation between NDD and the council and actually executing on some of these things. There's some really, really great stuff in here that I personally would love to see, and that I know would be very attractive to other people and get them to either move here or to move back here.
Well, thank you. We have to move quickly to make sure you're still young. Anybody else? Thank you.
My name is Andrea Carbine, and I'm the Work-Based Learning Coordinator at the North Country Career Center. I grew up here in Newport, and I remember the vibrancy that was once here. I left for about 20 years, and just over 12 years ago, we moved back with with visions of what Newport would be. And for the first time since I've moved back, I am now on the Newport Downtown Development Committee, and I have co-chaired the Housing Committee with Dr. Malik. I feel that there is a lot of positive energy, and there are a lot of people who have volunteered and are willing to see this forward. I know there's been different movement within the council itself, but I think that we have a great group of individuals here who are willing to support this, and I look forward to seeing where Newport can go.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your help on this. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Nick McClure, broker owner, Century 21. I'm also on the Housing Committee for NDD. Very fortunate to have the group that has worked tirelessly to put together what's been presented tonight. I'm really excited about it. It's the first time I've seen it. I think there's some wonderful opportunities there. I know change is always difficult. It's hard to adopt, but with change comes opportunity. So I ask you all to embrace the change and be open to new ideas. And I also think as a community, we all need to work together, do little things that add up to be big things. There was a comment earlier about housing, and maybe we don't need the $250,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 condo, but if that condo allows somebody that's been successful here to move out of their $180,000 house and into the condo, it frees up inventory that could go to more workforce housing. There's also other opportunities within our individual properties, maybe to create an ADU or add an additional unit or take on an investment like Mr. Rickofford Chase has done with a group of other partners. It's exciting to see those things come together. I think we've got a great board here, and we've got a lot of active and interested individuals behind the scenes with NDD and others that are excited to see Newport grow and move forward. I know taxes have been a huge concern to all of Vermont, but certainly Newport City, and we need to see growth to bring those taxes down. So I hope everybody will be open to the change. Thank you.
Thank you. And to your point, I think that we're aware that byproducts are going to come out of this, and those are the best opportunities as we go forward and see when something gets started, what's really might be the leader as opposed to the lost leader.
Exactly.
And so we'll look at all of that, and I thank you for those comments.
And I also think, we've seen success in communities like St. Albans, like St. Johnsbury's downtown, so to think that it's not possible, it's never going to change, it can't change, I think is really short-sighted and the easy way out. We need to be thinking, bigger picture and thinking about the next generation and generations to come.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Julie LaForce. I guess I just wanted to comment that, when I look at these kinds of plans, it's very exciting, obviously, as a local business owner, but also somebody that does the hiring. It's very encouraging to imagine, the opportunities there for more people to come to the area and for the growth that, we hope to also contribute to in Newport. Also, I guess I was thinking, when I look at these plans, I think it's important for people to be understanding that things happen in phases and stages and to remain patient. I guess I'm coming from the standpoint of remembering to keep a positive attitude all the way through, right? One thing will lead to another and it'll continue. So it's really important to keep that in mind as one project leads to the next and the next. I guess just kind of a comment about that.
Great.
Yeah.
And we are also instant gratification oriented, so I greatly appreciate the fact that they're not going to do this tomorrow, or are you doing this tomorrow? So, point well taken. Anybody else? Okay. I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. At this point, I would like to bring it back to Mr. LaForce to give us a little update on what's to follow.
So thank you, everybody. This is definitely a very exciting time for Newport, and we truly appreciate the mayor and the council support. I want everybody to be aware of the next steps, this really important plan. So this evening, a dedicated website will go live that has a copy of the enhanced master plan. We'll be handing out flyers this evening for the folks that are here, and that will have the QR code so you can easily get to that site. Also this evening, a survey will go live on that website where all surrounding communities, local residents can share their input on the plan. So it's going to be a very detailed survey that takes you site by site through the plan so you can give your input. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing a mass mailing of postcards to all Newport City residents. This is going to be paid by NDD. It's going to contain the QR code for the dedicated webpage and also the QR code for the survey. So that way everybody in the community will be well aware of what's going on in the community. On November 25th, which is next Monday, a week from today, we're going to have a public forum at the Newport Library on the second floor at 6 p.m. Zoom will be offered as well for those people that can't come to the library, so they can attend virtually. This will be advertised on our social media and website as well, so everybody's aware. On November 20th and 27th, the mayor will have her normal mayor hours, and that time will be dedicated for the master plan. So if you'd like to speak to the mayor about this plan, please do so on the 20th and the 27th. On November 27th at noon, public engagement will close, and our task force and the mayor will review all the comments that we received from the forum and also the surveys. The week of December 2nd, NDD will submit that feedback to VHB. VHB will take that feedback, and then on December 11th, VHB will send the final draft of the plan to the mayor and the council for review. And then on December 16th, at the normal council meeting, the mayor and the council will take action to approve the final report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we all see how much work went into this by everybody in Newport, and I thank my council members for being so patient and also for working closely with NDD to get all of this done. So, moving on. The next item on the agenda, comments by members of the public. Members of the audience are reminded that members of the press are present and that these proceedings are being recorded for current and future broadcast over the city's cable television channel. Members of the audience are further reminded that Newport City Council meetings are for the purpose of allowing council members to conduct city business. City council meetings are the only time the city council discusses, deliberates, and decides upon city matters. City council meetings are held in public to promote transparency and accountability in government, but are distinct from public hearings or town meetings in that they are not meetings of the public. Members of the public shall be afforded a reasonable opportunity to express opinions about matters considered by the city council. To conduct orderly and efficient meetings, I kindly request the public's cooperation and compliance with the published guidelines when participating in the meeting, and I thank you. So you will have 2 minutes once you are called to speak about the topic that you have identified. I ask that once again, you speak through me. This is a comment period. This is not a public question and answer period. So first person, Mr. Wilson. Former president of the council.
John Wilson, I live in Newport. I'll make this fast. On 28 October, a special council meeting, the Newport City Council voted to increase water sewer rates by a 3-to-1 vote. Water increase of 6% for both metered and non-metered homes, and a sewer increase of 8% for metered homes, and a whopping increase of 26% for non-metered homes. On 30 October, I called the 5 council members for an explanation on the vote. 3 responded. On 4 November 24, the council reaffirmed the 28 October vote. When I asked the mayor why this was done and why it was needed, she said it was needed. This is the first time, I think, in 22 years that the council has voted on something, they had to re-vote it or reaffirm it. On 7 November, I talked with a city official. Newport City has approximately 1,800 homes. Roughly now, I had 950, it's 1,000 are metered, with roughly 800 yet to do. On a quarterly average, the metered homes pay roughly an average of $180. Talking to owners of metered homes, the quarterly bill range from $125 to $200. Non-metered homes pay $227 quarterly. So the non-metered pay roughly $50 more for the city. The voted increase for water going in saw an equal 6% for metered and non-metered home. What goes in should come out. And there should have been an equal, not as sewer was raised to 26%. Metered home 8%, non-metered 26%. Please show me why it costs 3 times more to process non-metered sewer, or convince me that this was a biased vote to punish the non-metered homes. Nearly 40% of the city. One council member asked me how I would do it. My response was, if water going in was 6% equally, then the sewer increase should also be equal for all homes. And if more money is needed, increase both by 12 to 15%. But the non-metered homes should not be paying the largest brunt. Council, relook, rescind, and revote this unequal increase in sewer. In less than a year, and I'm not metered. In May, bill, I was paying $192. August went up to 227. Stayed the same in November, and now with the proposed increase, it'll go up to 272, up $45. If all the metered homes right now were metered, we're already, with this new increase, we'll be supplementing roughly $70 to $75 more than the non-metered homes. We're not second-class citizens, and if right now everything was metered just like that, quick figuring, we'd lose $54,600 quarterly that the non-metered homes are covering the city. Thank you very much. And I put this in 2 newspapers only because I think the people in Newport that aren't metered ought to know what's going on and that they're being treated really not equal. We're really being crapped on. So, and it should be out tomorrow in the Chronicle if he led right. And that's only to let the non-metered homes know they're not being treated very well in the city of Newport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Ladd?
Pamela, City of Newport. I film these meetings, and I have done for the last, I don't know how many years now, which gives me a sort of interesting perspective because, as I had a discussion earlier with somebody, nobody sees who stands behind the camera. The last meeting I attended, which was the special meeting, was one of the most disturbing meetings that I've been to for a long time. Not because of what the outcome was, but because of what happened in the room and outside the room while you guys were in your executive session. The amount of misinformation, distortion, and fantasy was mind-blowing, including when the previous mayor stood up here in front of the microphone and announced how appalled he was by the lack of transparency. Well, there was exactly the same amount of transparency for that meeting as there was for any other, with one exception. The one piece that was missing was the social Facebook page, where I usually post the meetings, but I was out of town. Big whoop. There was the same transparency, but that was treated as though it was a 3-ring circus. the concern that was expressed was based on nothing, and I didn't hear anybody asking questions. What I heard was a ton of accusation, a ton of innuendo, and a ton of spite. And I would hope that we as citizens can do better than that. We can ask questions, and all of us who've been coming to these meetings regularly watch what happened. We know why the city manager is no longer with us. We saw it. It was recorded. Those meetings are available to anybody who wants them. They only have to go to the NEK YouTube channel. They're all there, and it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Grimm?
Laurie Grimm, City of Newport. I want to take an opportunity to thank you, the members of the City Council, for the very difficult decision that you made last week in ending the contract and employment of Jonathan Delabria as our city manager. I know it was not an easy decision for any of you, and it was not something that was politically motivated or something that anyone that had met Jonathan or seen him work wanted to happen. I have attended almost every city council meeting for the last year and a half. And as Ms. Ladd said, I could not attend a meeting and not hear that there were documents and things that were left out, things that had been asked of the city manager that he could not present to the council. Many people have said that his appointment as the interim fire chief was the reason that he wasn't able to do his job. And I understand as a salaried employee that as a salaried employee, you work until you get your job done, and anything over and above that is considered extra. So, you know, I started work at 6 o'clock this morning and I ended work at 5:15 this afternoon before I came here. If you're working salary, you should know that you work until you get the job done. So I don't understand people who say that he was at fault. He requested, my understanding is, that position, and the council went forward with that. And he assured the council that he could do all of that work. What is surprising to me is the sheer number of people who have spoken the loudest about the firing of Mr. Delabria, that they seem to be missing information that they haven't held him responsible for. And they're blaming it on the mayor and the council for appointing him to another position. So it's concerning to me that they don't see that he needs to be held personally responsible for not giving the information to the council that was requested. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Rolla.
Not necessary, or NN as Rick Upperchase would say. Thank you.
I feel like a code going on. That's right. The next item on the agenda is new business. President Fashon?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis?
No, thanks.
Councilmember Chase?
No, thank you.
Treasurer Johnson?
Nothing.
The only thing I would like to say is that I have heard from the administration, and they have offered the mayor dates to come and meet with them to discuss the North Country Hospital situation, and I will be doing that. And I also have received dates to meet with the Green Mountain Care Board. So I will be doing both of those to make sure that we work hard to not repurpose our hospital and get the support and backing that we need and keep our healthcare system where it belongs. And I will give you updates after I have those meetings. Next item on the agenda is old business. President Sean?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis?
No, thanks.
Councilmember Chase?
No.
Treasurer Johnson?
No.
Next item on the agenda is to set the next meeting, the regularly scheduled council meeting for December 2, 2024. May I have a motion?
So.
The motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Before I go to the final item, I want to thank everybody once again for all your work, but I really want to thank the department heads who also participated in providing information to VHB, and it's a lot of work, and they did come out, and so I want to thank the city's department heads for doing that. They work hard. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion?
Oh, you got one.
I have a motion to adjourn at 7:48 PM. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried.